Hello guys, and welcome to my ICC tips and tricks video from a Warlock perspective. Most of the stuff in the video will be tips and tricks that all Warlock specializations can use, but some of it will be spec-specific stuff. If you have seen my tips and tricks videos for Ulduar and TOC, you will know what to expect. Anyway, let's not stall anymore and let's get straight to it. First boss, Marrowgar. For Marrowgar, my first tip to optimize uptime and damage is to stand near the main group but a bit to the side to have less movement from fire spawning on people. However, you do not want to be too far away so you don't get AoE'd down fast if you do get bone spiked. My second tip is to not seed on the bone spikes unless your raid group has a really low cleave, since they should die nearly instantly. My third and last tip for Marrowgar is to stand right in the middle of the people baiting the bone storm, so you lose no uptime on the boss in this phase. For Lady Deathwhisper, I place a portal before we even pull to quickly get into the middle of the room after you have faced the boss. My second tip is to put corruption up on ads before they get the reflective or immunity shield. However, this immune/reflective shield will eventually fade, and at this point you can do corruption on movement while dodging spirits etc. later on. My third and last tip for Lady Deathwhisper is to of course snipe shadow balls on ads for decimation if you're playing demonology. Now for Gunship. Gunship is a bit of a meme fight, however I do have one tip. And the non-meme tip for this boss is that your pet will be stuck on the boat after the fight is over, and you will need to resummon it at Saurfang unless it has been fixed for launch, of course, which I don't know at the current time. Now for Deathbringer Saurfang. My first tip is to stand close enough to be able to reach all blood beasts with your corruption after they've been knocked back by a boomy or elemental shaman. This way you also secure that you will always be in range of your rogue giving you tricks. My second tip is to time your infernals on blood beast waves for the last 2 to 3 waves of blood beast you will receive to make them smoother and get a natural use of your infernal. After the boss dies, you can resummon your Fell Hunter and go to the portal near the ship. It will become active when someone has completed the little room after Saurfang, and you can skip that part. My third tip is to place portal behind you to escape beasts that are not being controlled by stuns and taunts in the melee. My last tip is for the demonology boys out there, and that is of course to try and snipe blood beasts that are below 35% with Shadow Ball to proc decimation during this fight. Now for the Plague Wing. Let's start off with Rotface. My first tip for Rotface is that your portal is yet again your best friend. Whether you're in melee or positioned in the outer ring as a ranged, if you are positioned in melee, place your portal in the middle so you can quickly get back after the ooze explosion. And if you're positioned in range, place your portal on your assigned position to also quickly get back after ooze explosion, or after you've been out with your little debuff to spawn an ooze. My second tip is that you can tank the spray from Rotface most of the fight. As long as it's the only type of damage you're taking at the moment, you can out-heal it quite easily as Affliction, and as a demo lock you take a lot less damage because of Soul Link, so it's completely fine. My third tip is that you can corruption the small or big slimes on movement, fishing for eradication, nightfall or molten core procs. For Festergut, there's not really many tips I could think of. The only tip I can think of for this boss is to yet again use your portal. You can place your portal either on where your stationary position is or on the designated spore position to quickly move in and out to optimize your damage. I couldn't really find anything else to do on this boss. Now for Putricide though. It is one of my favorite bosses as a Warlock in ICC. My first tip for this boss is to pre-place your portal to use it later if you're fixated by the green slime, or use it for kiting the orange slime. It is nice if all of the Warlocks in your raid have the same position of their portal, so your entire raid knows where you are portaling to when you make the call that you can portal the green slime. My second tip is having Putricide as a focus target, maintaining all dots and Shadow Embrace while also dealing damage to your slime. This is how we're going to top damage on this fight as a Warlock. My third tip is to only soak if it's really needed on the green slime. If you as a Warlock get knocked into a bad position, you will lose all your dots, your Tricked Corruption, your Shadow Embrace stacks, all of it. So if there's enough people soaking, no need for you to also help out. My last tip is to pre-position yourself to be able to dot any slime spawn while still maintaining all damage on Putricide. So if the orange slime is spawning next, you're in a position to instantly dot it while maintaining full uptime on the boss. Now for Blood Council. For Blood Council, my first tip is to place your portal, yet again, in an either designated shock vortex position or just in the middle of the room to quickly stack it when the fire boss gets empowered. I cannot tell you exactly what position to place the portal, as your strategy may differ from the one we use in my guild. However, just keep in mind your portal is a great way for movement here, as whenever you move you take increasingly damage, so you don't want to be moving too much. My second tip is to be using pets to keep the kinetic bombs up. It will greatly decrease your damage, but my guild has found it's the best way to keep the kinetic orbs from hitting the ground. Sorry about that, Warlocks and Hunters. However, I think only Affliction Warlocks should do this, not Demonology Warlocks. The Demonology Warlock pet does significantly more damage than the Affliction Warlock pet, so keep the Demonology Warlock pet on the boss. My third and last tip is to pre-cast Curse of Doom if you know the next active boss. The rotation is not always the same with what boss comes active as the second one, but as soon as you've seen who the second boss is, you will know what the third boss will be and you can use Curse of Doom on it. Now for Blood Queen. My first tip is to, you guessed it, once again, pre-place your portal to a designated safe spot during the air phase if you have it pre-assigned. If you don't have a pre-assigned safe spot, just put it far in the back to make room for other people during this phase. My second and last tip for this boss is to of course snapshot Corruption on the bite, as its damage % modifier, and that's what we like on the Corruption. Now for Dreamwalker. Dreamwalker is a bit of a special boss. I thought long and hard about this one and I came up with two things. The first thing is to help with dots on the zombie that is most likely being kited by your hunter. You may have a different guy, but that's the common. You don't have to focus it down, as the hunter will most likely lose threat if you do that, but keep dots on it and so it dies at a good pace. My second and last tip is to have your portal positioned on the opposite side of where you are playing this boss to quickly adapt to the Blazing Skeleton. Blazing Skeleton is a must kill as soon as possible. Now for a boss not many caster players will enjoy, which is Sindragosa. My first tip for this boss is that instant spells casted after a hard cast during Unchained Magic does not give you an additional stack, so you can technically cast 2 spells and only gain 1 stack. My second tip is that before every air phase you can Curse of Doom Sindragosa, so right before she goes out of reach you can cast it. My third tip is that you can cast on her until the bomb targets have been marked, as long as you're standing far enough back in the room and you're playing the position that you can see my guild is playing here. My fourth tip is to not dot the tombs at all. Rather use your seed or hard cast shadow bolts to not overkill them too early. If everyone is using dots, then controlling when they die becomes a lot more unstable. My fifth tip is that the resistance flask in the last phase is nice, but it's not needed as an Affliction Warlock, as you have quite a bit of self-heal through Haunt and Corruption. My last tip for this boss is that you can use every second ice block to clear stacks from you in the last phase. I am going to assume most guilds will have 2 designated spots for ice blocks in the last phase, and you can basically just stand behind one of them the entire fight and therefore don't have to move so much between them. So, for every boss so far, there hasn't been too many things per boss, but now on Lich King there will be a lot, so prepare for a little longer session here. My first tip is, you guessed it, once again we pre-place our portal to where you want to end phase 1 for more uptime on the boss. The spot I always put my portal in is a safe spot from damage from the Lich King in the intermission phase, and you also cannot fall down, so I always choose this specific spot. My next tip is to Soulstone pre-pull to gain an additional use of Soulstone. This is a 15-minute plus fight, so you will get 2 uses of your Soulstone here if you pre-cast it. The additional use of Soulstone can be placed upon yourself to intentionally die on the Frostmourne room to be rest outside dealing damage to the Lich King. This strategy was nerfed by Blizzard in the last round of the PTR, but it still has its uses, don't worry. For example, once you enter your last Frostmourne room, you can die intentionally, rest outside, already pre-place your portal, stack Shadow Embrace and pre-cast Infernal right before the room ends. This way, you're ready instantly to do massive damage into Lich King with already 3 Shadow Embrace stacks up, while your raid is kiting him during the enrage. For this, I would also bring bandages, as the Lich King is taking approximately 99% less damage during Frostmourne room, so you can't be healing yourself up with Corruption and Drain Life. Stuff that you can use to efficiently kill yourself during the Frostmourne room suck-in, I'm not sure what it's called, I'm just gonna call it a suck-in, is stuff like a cancel macro to spam that removes any hots on you, any HP buffs on you, while also using Skull of Impending Doom while doing a couple of life taps before it happens too. My next tip is to multi-dot efficiently on Raging Spirits during transition and during phase 2. Do not be tunneling Drain Soul into a spirit that is already dying from dots. Move on to the next one. My next tip is an overall tip for the entire boss, and that is to save your rocket boots for Defile. You can however use rocket boots in phase 1 to bring out the plague and it'll be ready for a later Defile. My next tip is why Warlocks in particular are so good on Lich King, and that is to use your portal to avoid the entire Valkyrie mechanic. Have your portal placed on the edge and you can portal back up after the Valkyrie drops you. This saves your raid a ton of add damage and you can focus more on the Lich King himself. My next tip is how to handle the Valkyrie waves. I prefer to seed on the Valkyries while maintaining focus, macro haunt / nightfall for Lich King to keep Shadow Embrace stacks up and your corruption. You can also dot the first Valkyrie spawning until all 3 of them have spawned to get faster or more damage on them. In the last wave of Valkyries, if you seed instantly, you will also be AoE capped, since the seed will hit the Valkyries that are above Lich King, making abilities like Unstable Affliction, Corruption very strong at this point. Seed is also very mana heavy, while Unstable Affliction costs very little mana. My next tip is another reason why Warlocks are super strong for Lich King: progression, and that is to use Infernals to stun the Valkyries. This stun does not share DR with any other stuns and it has a huge radius. However, if you only have to stun 1 Valkyrie, an Infernal can be a bit wasted, and you can instead call for a Rogue to cheap shot it if only 1 Valkyrie needs to be stunned, and the Rogue can do that by vanishing into a cheap shot. Cheap shot also does not share DR with any of the other normal stuns, just like Infernal. My next tip is to just spam Corruption everything in the Frostmourne room. How you want to do it, if it's a camera angle to click them or spam tap to target them, that's completely up to you and however you feel comfortable in the room. Now, the next tip will be for the last phase, and that is to use your portal in the last phase to quickly go from side to side. I prefer to have my portal right in the middle of the room, as this position should always be clear of Defile, at least if your raid team is playing the Defile correctly. A tip for the Warlocks who want to help their healers out is that you might get some sketchy infests where the healers are behind, and when this happens you can pre-pop a Shadow Ward, be ready to Death Coil or use a couple of ticks of Drain Life. This can be the literal difference between life or death for you on this fight. My last tip for Lich King is a little bit risky, and you should only do this if you're really confident in the fight and that is to use rocket boots for more drain soul uptime below 25%. And the reason you have to be confident is that now you will not have it ready for if you get Defile. So you will need to be aware and pre-spec for every Defile if you plan on using your boots like this. And that's about it, guys. This is all of the tips and tricks I have for you for now. I am sure there's a lot more that me and my guild probably missed. If you feel like I missed something that you are aware of, you can post it in the comments below to help people out. If there's enough things that I missed, I can make a follow-up video in the future to address these new tips and tricks. Other than that, that would be it for now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully it helped you out if you're new to ICC, or even if you're not new, you picked up a thing or two. If you liked the video, feel free to share it, like it, throw a comment, anything helps. I will be very busy with ICC launch, but I will read every single comment you guys put on here. If you want to watch me play ICC live on stream, make sure to head over to twitch.tv/TakeNoteTV. Best of luck in ICC, guys, and may the gear drops with you. Until next time.